What are some of the ways that our brain or our mind or our
Mhm.
psychology can impact our physiology?
Yeah. So it's a lot of what gut feelings is about these what I call metaphysical meals, like either healthy metaphysical meals or these really saboteurs. And it's a lot more non-linear, more abstract, more complex to talk about, right? But things like chronic stress and what that even means and unresolved trauma and what I call shameflammation in the book. Like, how do things that cause shame, like unresolved trauma and chronic stress and body shame and food shame and stress about healthy foods like orthorexia, how do those things impact our biochemistry? How do they raise inflammation levels? How do they dysregulate that neuroimmunoendocrine axis just as much as a food that doesn't love us back? Which it's going to it's pervasive, but it's a lot more okay. It's easier for me to say, okay, eat these foods that have been shown to support X, Y, and Z. Don't have these ones because they've been shown to sabotage X, Y, and Z. But it's a lot more complex to say, well, don't have shame. Don't have, just drop that
Come
trauma,
on.
please. You
Yeah.
don't have it next time, please. It doesn't work like that. So
Yeah.
we have to really cultivate what are ways that we can metabolize stored trauma? What are ways we can clear this out and retrain our nervous system, retrain our brain to be more in a parasympathetic state and support vagal tone from that side as well. And that's why, in part, why I called the book Gut Feelings. It's physiological gut
Hmm.
and psychological feelings. So both and not either or is how you deal with chronic inflammatory problems, metabolic issues, and brain health issues. So yeah, it's important. And then like a third piece I see clinically is our biotoxins and environmental toxins, which
Hmm.
will sabotage both. It will sabotage both. It'll decrease migrating motor complex, which will breed these bacterial overgrowths. It'll impact the brain because they are neurotoxins, many of them. But quantifying things like glyphosate in the body or quantifying mold toxins or other pathogenic issues are also, it's almost like a triad. You have to look at food and then the feeling stuff and then the environmental component too.
Hmm. So I think we're all fairly familiar with this idea of fight or flight as a biological kind of feature in the system, not a
Mhm.
bug in the system per se. A snake slithers across the floor.
A real
A real
snake,
snake in
not
this
poop,
case, not
not
a poop.
not a bowel
Although they
movement.
might have the same impact, depending. Not for you. You're so inured to poop, and I'm a dad, so
Yeah,
I had a lot of poop in my life.
yeah.
But as a snake slithers across the floor, and boom, we're programmed to go into like
Yeah.
what I sort of our amygdala gets triggered, etc.,
Mhm.
and it starts this endocrine cascade. So maybe talk about just that, the HPA axis,
Yeah,
and then how modernity has sort of taken what was sort of a biological feature and
yeah,
made it somewhat maladaptive.
yeah, exactly. So there's nothing wrong with the sympathetic aspect of the autonomic nervous system. It kept us alive. We would not be here with a healthy nervous system response, a healthy fight or flight or freeze response. But it's that evolutionary mismatch again, right? It's we are being chased by that proverbial predator perpetually, right? And that's the issue. Um, and that's what our body believes, and it's acting as if it's under threat by something that is going to go away, but it just never goes away because of this misalignment, because of this chasm between genetics and epigenetics. So yeah, it is that's what's at play there. So what's happening on a physiological level is you're in this sympathetic fight or flight freeze state, is that neuroimmunoendocrine axis, the intersection between the nervous system, the immune system, i.e., inflammation, endocrine system, i.e., hormones, is responding to that threat, whether it's a physiological threat or a psychological threat or both. So there's things we talked about in the gut, environmental toxins, or it's unresolved trauma that's happened years ago, but it's living in your body as if it's still happening now. All of that, either physiological and or psychological threat, will put your body more into that stressed state, which will impact the sympathetic. It'll increase the sympathetic. So think of it like a seesaw, and the sympathetic fight or flight is increased. The parasympathetic resting, digesting, hormone balanced state is decreased, and inflammation levels typically will come up. Cortisol levels and adrenaline are increased through what's called, as you mentioned, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So it's impacting your blood sugar, impacting your blood pressure to get you out there. It's increasing your heart rate so to protect you. And cortisol also acts as an endogenous immunosuppressant. So it's actually a natural anti-inflammatory. So the body is still trying to create homeostasis within that Goldilocks state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a maelstrom.
Yeah, exactly.